the Subcommittee on Childcare Access and Affordability will come to order. There is a quorum present. And Representative Quam, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from February 8th?
I have reviewed and wish to move the minutes and approve them.
That is amazing. So Representative Quam moves the approval of the minutes from February 8th. Any additions, corrections, or changes? All right, hearing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion prevails and the minutes from February 8th are approved. So today, on this beautiful Wednesday, we are going to hear a presentation by WomenVenture about childcare cooperatives and the business training they provide to start up childcare businesses. And I would like to welcome the WomenVenture Executive Director, Elaine Wyatt, to come forward.
Where would you like me? Here?
Nope, testifying stand.
Oh. I've been here before, but not in this room.
All right, welcome to the committee, Ms. Wyatt. Please state your name and title for the record.
Elaine Wyatt, Executive Director of WomenVenture.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for carving out time to hear about the work that we're doing at WomenVenture. If you aren't familiar with our mission is really focused on helping women start and grow sustainable and profitable businesses. Those two words, sustainable and profitable, are really our mantra. So our focus is to make sure that when women start businesses or are trying to grow their businesses, that those businesses are productive for them financially and for their employees. So the goal is for them to produce a living wage for themselves and their employees. We've had some really great success in the last couple of years in our work. Last year we supported over 600 businesses, and those businesses generated or retained 1,300 jobs. And the number that we feel the most excited about is that those businesses are paying themselves and their employees a wage of $27 an hour. So that's really the best in the market in terms of economic development. And I think it's really based on that focus of making sure that when women start businesses, that they're going to make sense for them financially. When we launched our new program, which is what we use, a pathway to entrepreneurship, we actually have a training program that is 17 sessions, it's 13 weeks, and it's a really intensive program to train women in how to either do a better job in running the business that they have or to create a plan for a business that they want to launch. And at the end, they have a business plan that they present to a group of volunteers and staff. And what we were seeing is that there was a group of women, primarily low-income women, women of color, that were going to every class, they understood the concepts, they created a great plan, but they were not transitioning to entrepreneurship. And really when we dug into it, the underlying reason was really their low wealth profile. They needed to start a business that was going to start paying them right away, and the other obstacle was really their lack of assets to be able to attain capital. So we really started looking at this from a strategic perspective, because really one of our missions is to help low-income women have successful businesses to build wealth for themselves. And what we saw across the country in a couple of spots, both on the East Coast and the West Coast, is a model of cooperatively owned businesses, particularly in that service space. So whether that's a PCA-related business, a cleaning business, or a childcare business, that focus on coming together and cooperatively owning the business, which elevates the wages significantly, and then also gives the women the opportunity to have ownership. So when we started to explore this in this market, we had conversations with multiple foundations, and I also got connected with a woman who has deep expertise in cooperative business ownership. She actually works for us now, so that's pretty exciting. She is our Women's Business Center Director, Sarah Pike. But we were looking and starting to talk to Kellogg in particular, who has invested in the cooperative strategy across the country. quite frankly, with not a lot of success. One of the issues is that the nonprofits that they were investing in were more workforce development instead of economic development. So they were not focused first, which we always focus on, does the market have a need? That's always first. If you're going to start a business, there has to be a need in the market. So we started talking with them about this concept of creating cooperatively owned childcare centers in the urban core. And this is a real passion and interest of theirs. And so after about 18 months of conversation, we have a successful grant from them now for $375,000. The way that the project is going to work is that we will recruit women who are already working in childcare. So they are childcare, typically working within a center, who want to transition to some sort of ownership. We will do what we do in our other pathways, which is really explore whether or not entrepreneurship is right for them, and additive is cooperative ownership right for them, because it's really important in a cooperative structure that you go in and recognize that you're going to share the leadership and the wealth of the business. And so really probably starting with a bigger number, typically in our Getting Ready class, which is a similar concept, we convert about 40% of the clients onto creating a business plan. And I would assume that that would be similar. So we'll convert women into a cohort, and then they will create a plan, a business plan for their cooperative. We will support them in creating that plan, implementing it, capitalizing the plan, and then also incubating it over a period of 18 months. The goal is really to transition them to independence in their ownership. So our goal with the Kellogg program is to do 2 of those in the urban core in the next 3 years. And so part of what we're looking for is funding to fill that gap. So Kellogg gave us $375,000. We're estimating the cost of the project to be about $600,000. The other piece that's really important to us and really reflective of the work that we do is how can we replicate this? So really creating a manual that can be used for people that are implementers in other communities is going to be a key piece. And then the simplicity. A lot of the times that I see working in economic development, we make it really, really hard for business owners by giving them tools that they don't know how to use and are not free to them either. So really identifying those free platforms, Google Docs, free websites, low cost or no cost bookkeeping systems, and really building it out so that it can be a low cost model. So that's really our concept around the cooperative ownership for the daycare project. And if you guys have any questions, I'd love to hear them at this time.
Vice Chair Peterson.
Good morning. Thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering, as you've been working with these groups, and they're for daycare providers, right? And so, as we've been transitioning from basically daycare to really educational centers, have you been able to provide any resources to these groups for parent-aware ratings or educational credentialing or of any sort?
Well, we really point people to Think Small to do that work. And we really believe in the model that is used in Chicago, and that is that do what you know and do well. And for us, it's really around business. And so we know that resource already exists in the market. It's a part of a business plan to know what your program is and to have quality program. It's a part of your marketing as well. And so really making sure that they have that baked into their plan and that they're planning for that. But that's not, if they're going off the rails in any way, we certainly will engage with them and either directly give them the resources, accounting, HR, legal, those kinds of pieces. But if it's not in our expertise, we'll get them connected with a community resource.
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Peterson.
Thank you. And then I was just curious, what did you use the grant money for? I presume startup costs or something along that line, but can you give us a better idea of what
Right.
those expenditures were? Thank you.
Well, we haven't launched the grant yet, but the budget is really focused, primarily it will be on the resources that it will take to help. So we will have a full-time person that will be running the program. They will have a childcare expertise, but more in that business space. So probably somebody that has led at least a small center, really understands the mechanics, because that's typically where businesses struggle, is not so much in the delivery of something that they're an expert at, but really in the back office, the pieces of making sure that you bill and collect and have good contracts, and that if you have employees, that you're making sure that all the paperwork is in place. So really somebody that has that background to really support these cooperatives will be a key piece of the grant. And then Kellogg really wants us to do a convening nationally to look at models that are working in the 24-hour childcare space. So we'll have some contractual expenses as well. So that will be the key pieces.
One more
Ms.
follow-up.
Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it really won't be for things like improvements to spaces or anything like that. That's more of from a consultant standpoint?
Well, we do actually.
Ms. Wyatt, we go through the chair.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair and members of the committee, I apologize. We have capital that we will borrow to the co-ops where they can purchase pay for the space and the equipment and those kinds of pieces. But the expectation is that they would assume capital like in other businesses.
Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt, could you explain to the body exactly how a co-op works, what that looks like?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, a cooperative can take many forms. The form of this cooperative is a worker-owner co-op. So every owner is a worker, so they have to work within the business, and they have an equal ownership share of the business. So as the business grows and has an asset profile, they actually have a piece of that, the net assets of the business, and they will also be a part of the leadership of the business.
Members, do we have any questions for Ms. Wyatt? Go ahead, Ms. Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so is it an ESOP or is it, will they have equal liability as well as equal ownership then?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, it's not an ESOP. They will have equal risk and liability, although we'll build some of that in through insurance into the business structure itself. So it's really a cooperatively owned business.
Representative Flanagan, did you have things to add?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll be formally presenting some bills on Monday that will lift this program up in particular and talk about the opportunity to invest in what I think is a really exciting development, especially as we've traveled across the state and we've just heard the need for additional opportunities for childcare, but also for entrepreneurship for folks in communities. So I just wanted to thank WomenVenture for presenting today and helping to solve some of the problems that we've identified as we've traveled throughout the state. One of the issues that we heard quite a bit about is that folks aren't necessarily breaking even or have found that have taken on some risk as they've opened childcare within their homes or have opened centers. And I think pointing to this model of opportunity and support just shows us a different way to do things, and I think provides an opportunity for folks to have support along the way, and that's worth taking a look at and investing in.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions to Representative Flanagan or Ms. Wyatt? Okay, well, thank you for
Thank you
coming
so
and
much.
presenting. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And Representative Flanagan, look forward to hearing your bills on Monday. I understand the YWCA is here to testify about this topic. We have, looks like Arnaldo. And I'm not even going to try with the last name.
It's Curiel.
Okay, thank you. So Curiel?
Hello, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Representative.
Curiel, go ahead.
My name is Dr. Arnoldo Curiel. I am the Vice President at the YWCA's Minneapolis Racial Justice and Public Policy Department. And I want to first thank you all for the opportunity to talk about our workforce development program that we're currently being funded by the state and has a proposal in for increased funding. Our program supports women in the community who are looking to get their child development associate credential. The CDA credential is nationally recognized and supported by the National Association for Education of Young Children. It's the first step in a laddered career with an acute shortage of workers. Our overall, nearly 20% of the state's early childhood education positions are filled by non-credentialed individuals, with that raising to nearly 40% in the cities. So as you can see, there's a need, and our women are highly employable. Our first cohort is in the middle of its classroom experience. We have 9 women in the program, and they're about 8 months away from graduation. Our second cohort started last week with an additional 18. All are employed. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought here. All are, breathe here, you guys caught me off.
You're just fine,
Yeah.
just take your time.
All right, I'm gonna sit back here.
Just,
This is,
you're fine.
I'm good. I'm completely good.
Have you had your coffee yet this morning?
No, I haven't had my coffee, and you know what? I gave up drinking soda for the new year,
Uh-huh.
and that's driving me nuts.
Struggle. Yep, it's a struggle.
Yeah. All of our students participating in this program are low income, and only one of these individuals is employed at all. And she has a part-time job. The education field is in need of teachers, particularly teachers of color. Although we don't have the statistics specifically for early childhood, all licensed teachers in the state of Minnesota, 94% of them are white. Minnesota, in our current program, all but 2 individuals of color and all are women. The students have come from employment counselors and supportive housing programs like the Simpson House. The importance of our program is, as I said earlier, it's a laddered program. You heard WomenVenture talk about their career in helping women get their own business. Our hope is that they'll come into the field credentialed, ready to work. And then in a year or so, take that next step to opening up more culturally specific programs within their neighborhood, within their communities, and serving the communities that are desperately in need of culturally representative childcare. At the YWCA Minneapolis, we have a highly diverse staff. That staff has led to over 90% of our kids being kindergarten ready and not having an achievement gap. So when we talk about the need for culturally diverse childcare providers, we show that on a daily basis at the YWCA. And your work here at the state has helped us create a pipeline into the field of more women of color into the profession. That's really what I'm here to talk about, and thank you for your support on that. And thank you for putting up with me on this early morning, this stuff. I was not ready for this after being up at 5 o'clock in the morning and not having my coffee or soda.
I'm gonna be right with you in a little bit when I present my bill, and I'll probably be just the same way.
Yeah, well, if you want me to grab you a coffee, I will on the way back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Oh, hold on a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry, any questions?
Curiel, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Curiel? All right, seeing none.
I'm a little jealous, I mean, you peppered WomenVenture and not me, so thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for visiting us this morning. Do we have anybody else in the audience that wishes to testify this morning? No? All right. Then we will switch seats.
Good morning. The bill we have before us for consideration is House File 1458, and Representative moves the bill be approved and recommended to the Committee on HHS Reform. And both copies, this bill is posted as H File XXXX, and both copies are in your folders. So, yeah.
I have House File 1458.
So 1458, all right, so let's move House File 1458.
Okay.
Senator Franson.
Thank you. Morning, members. We have in front of us House File 1458. Childcare assistance helps families access and afford stable, nurturing care environments for their children while parents strive for success at work. In addition to being good policy, some of the provisions in this bill are required under the Federal Child Care Development Block Grant reauthorization that Congress passed. Sadly, though, the block grant does put unfunded mandates on our state, and this bill addresses some of those mandates. As currently written, the bill mirrors language included in Governor Dayton's budget proposal, except that his proposal includes additional child care licensing requirements, where this bill just focuses on the components that improve CCAP for families and providers. I have a few testifiers today, starting with Melinda Hugdahl, representing the Kids Can't Wait Coalition, and Melinda is going to walk us through the bill in more detail. And then we'll have some other testifiers, including Bev Turner on behalf of Catholic Charities of St. Paul and Minneapolis, and Daniel Gumnett of People Serving People.
Ms. Hugdahl, if you'd like to introduce yourself for the record and start with your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Melinda Hugdahl from Legal Aid here on behalf of the Kids Can't Wait Coalition, which I know many of you are familiar with, and we are a broad coalition of people who work with parents, of providers, of public policy groups, of faith-based groups, and we've all come together to work on child care issues generally, and this is one of the bills that we are working on this session. I want to thank Representative Franson for authoring this bill and moving it forward. Thank you. Generally, the provisions of the bill fit into three broad categories. It's program simplification and kind of streamlining it to make this program easier to use for parents, for providers, for the counties, providing stabilities for family and children, and increasing the provider reimbursement rate. So those are, through the bill, kind of the three big buckets that these proposals fit into. All of these pull together to make the child care assistance program a more affordable and accessible and stable program both for families and providers. So Section 1 of the bill recognizes kind of the dual purpose of the CCAP program. When I say CCAP, that's child care assistance, which is to both support financial stability of parents, and that supports the family, and also developmental needs of kids. Section 2 inserts a definition of homeless for purposes of the expedited application process for homeless families, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. Section 3 makes changes to the transition year program, which is kind of the bridge program between MFIP childcare and basic sliding fee. This is when families are leaving MFIP and they're not yet on basic sliding fee. It's adding education as an approved activity, and this is a piece at Legal Aid we've seen multiple times. We have parents who are going to school on the MFIP childcare program. They start getting some employment, they move off, and education is no longer approved. So they're in the position of having to quit school when they're in the transition year program, even though they can go back to school when they get on basic sliding fee. So this fills that gap. The provision also helps smooth the cliff between MFIP and transition year by reducing the eligibility months from 3 to 1 when people are getting close to the end of that MFIP eligibility point to help them move more quickly over to transition year. Section 4 makes the same changes to education to the kind of companion piece to transition year, which is called transition year extension, which has helped some families still access childcare if they aren't able to get onto the basic sliding fee program yet. It aligns the child care rules, and those are the rule references that you see in the bill. Section 5 is another provision related to homeless families, and it permits DHS to limit some of those extensions of care and have rulemaking authority. Section 6 separates application process from redetermination. They're kind of mushed into one statute now, and this separates them out. It requires approval or denial of the application within 30 days, or it can be extended to 45 days notice to the applicant. It also has another provision regarding to homeless families. They don't have to have all the verifications on. The general gist is that they can come onto the program for 3 months while they are getting their paperwork together, and that helps facilitate them coming into the program. Section 7 is another big component of the bill, which is setting redeterminations at 12 months. That's a significant source of stability for families and for providers, because everyone knows for 12 months, unless there's some really big change that impacts eligibility, you're going to be on the program with the same copay. The providers know what to expect. They know how much they're going to be reimbursed by the family. And it's really, this is a huge step forward for the program. Section 8 are the changes that require, again, eligibility. Small temporary changes that don't impact eligibility aren't required to be reported. So if you have a temporary shift change or a break from school, you don't have to report every single one. If it impacts your eligibility, you have to report it. But when your 12-month redetermination comes up, then they do look at what's kind of the schedule at that point in time and kind of reset it. So the pieces that change do come up. It's just not in every little incremental one, which is really simplifying things a lot. Section 9 deletes a reference to 119B07, which is repealed at the end of the bill, and really what that's doing is moving a lot of those provisions other places within the statute where they fit better within the kind of new structure of the program. Section 10 is the portability pool reference. That's for families who are moving between counties. It sometimes comes into play when their families are moving to a county that maybe has a waiting list or from a waiting list, and this helps smooth that process for those families, so they can use that portability pool coverage for a little bit while they are moving between counties. Section 11 is a provision specifically about student parents who are under the age of 21 who are attending school. They can qualify for MFIP childcare specifically under state law, and this allows them a little bit of an extension of time with the 12-month redetermination, that when they turn 21, they can stay on until their end of their next 12-month redetermination. They can then move to basic sliding fee childcare, but at least gives them a little bit of float time to help extend their childcare stability for a bit. Section 12 is really a lot of wording changes. Talks about co-payments are a condition of eligibility. It includes an asset limit, and has some really stability of payment things about what happens when life events or things happen, your kids turn kind of at the exit age or other things happen, and it lines it really up with 12-month redetermination or the eligibility, whichever happens first usually. Section 13 is aligning the definition of self-employment for income purposes with the MFIP definition. Section 14 is a really significant change about determining the authorized amount of care. The county worker considers the amount of time that a child is in Head Start, the amount of time the parents are working or going to school, and they determine the number of authorized hours, but it's really meant to be much more flexible. The current schedule is you're tied to very specific times of the day, which doesn't accommodate for changes of class schedule or a work shift change, and this gives the provider and the family the flexibility to use those hours for the hours that they need coverage without having to file paperwork to make those changes. So that's a significant change. It also has a approval specifically for homeless families again, which again is really built in to try and help those families come into the program, have stable child care so they can start moving forward as well. Section 15 is really restructuring provisions about job search. Section 16 is related to consistent provisions for recipients that attend school. A lot of this is reorganization of current law and that deleted section, moving those provisions into this section of the statute. Section 17 is, these are the permanent changes and the ones that are more likely to impact your eligibility. In addition to your income changing, if you have a permanent job loss, you were getting CCAP because you were going to school and you quit school without intention of really returning, those are the things that need to be reported immediately and impact your eligibility. It will extend you for 3 months in case it's a job loss type situation and you do find another job so that there's not a break in the child care for the child. But at the end of that 3 months, if you still are in a permanent status that doesn't qualify you, you do leave the program. Section 18 makes some changes to collection of overpayments. It's really trying to look at some of the overpayments that are small amounts, that are older, that were agency errors, not trying to collect those from families. Obviously, if we have situations where people are committing fraud or they're working with providers to to do things with hours that they aren't supposed to be doing, those are still obviously going to be things that the state's going to look at. But they're trying to look at making some of these smaller amounts and agency errors those are things they're not going to be focusing on. Section 19 really is aligning co-payments with that 12-month eligibility. Again, this just keeps the co-payment stable for that 12-month period unless something else significant changes that impacts their eligibility. Section 20 is about the reimbursement rates, and this is a really significant piece of this whole package of proposals. And I think as folks know, right now, the provider reimbursement rate is frozen at the 2011 rates, and this updates that to the 2016 rate. And this is a huge barrier for families. It's a big issue for providers that we just have not kept up since 2011. So this would impact those rates. Section 21 clarifies that billing has to be tied to record-keeping requirements, but it also shortens the time period in which then the provider will be paid. Section 22 is again aligning self-employment definitions between programs. Section 23 fits the MFIP childcare reporting requirements to align with CCAP because there's MFIP childcare and basic sliding fee, and they're both under CCAP. So this is making those reporting requirements for MFIP childcare families the same as the basic sliding fee ones, which are, we want to know about major changes that impact your eligibility, but small changes don't need to. So those are conforming changes. Section 24 really is aligned with that as well. That's kind of making the same changes with basic sliding fee. And Section 25 is the repealer of 119B07, which again, a lot of those provisions which relate to students and other things are just moved somewhere else within the statutes that remain. And that's the bill.
Thank you very much. Did you want, Representative Franson, would you like to have your other testifiers come down, or do members
Yeah,
have
that would be
questions now, or what would?
Great time for that,
Okay,
Madam Chair.
thank you. So please state your name for the record and begin your testimony. Thank you for being here this morning.
Madam Chair, Subcommittee members, my name is Beverly Turner. I'm representing Catholic Charities today. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House File 1458, specifically the eligibility provisions and the redetermination provisions that provide increased continuity for not only the families working, but also for the long-term stability of the children. The bill mitigates the disruption of employment, education, and job training for parents, as well as providing that continuity of care and a stable environment for the children. Children have better educational and developmental outcomes when they have this continuity of care and childcare arrangements, especially for young children. When they have a safe environment that's stable, it provides an opportunity to develop the relationships necessary to comfortably explore and learn from their environment. Conversely, frequent changes in childcare arrangements are associated with higher levels of distress and negative behavior in infants and toddlers. In addition, the bill also takes away the perverse incentive of forcing families to forego modest increases in wages or working additional hours for fear of losing their child care assistance. Families find that even if they have only marginally better circumstances because of those increases in wages, it does not equal the amount that they lose in the benefit of the assistance. The bill before you seeks to remedy that effect. When the Child Care Assistance Program was created in 1990, it was primarily seen as a work support program, and in fact, it was housed under deed in the state. The changes before you reorient the bill to a commitment to child development. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the committee, and please state your name for the record and begin your testimony. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Daniel Gumnett, and I'm the CEO of People Serving People. And I also want to thank Representative Franson for her leadership on this bill. People Serving People is the region's largest shelter for children and families experiencing homelessness, and we really support the program improvements in this bill. In 2016, People Serving People sheltered nearly 2,000 children and their families. The average age of a child in our shelter was 6 years old. Last year, more than 300 young children attended our 4-star Parent Aware rated child development program at our shelter. And sadly, for many of these children, this was the very first structured learning environment that any of them had ever experienced. Every day, we see the struggles that parents experiencing homelessness face. The families we serve have survived significant trauma. Studies show that more than 90% of women experiencing homelessness are victims of sexual and/or domestic violence. Understanding the devastating impact that homelessness has on child development and family stability, we passionately believe that connecting families with quality child development is essential to allowing both the children and the parents to break the cycle of homelessness. There's a direct correlation between access to quality early childhood development and breaking the cycle of homelessness. The healthy development of children early in life is their primary indicator of their future success. That is why we support the program improvements in this bill. In particular, for families experiencing homelessness, we support the provision for creating an expedited 5-business-day application process with proof of eligibility within 3 months. Because of the high mobility of these families, this provision will make a dramatic improvement in these families' ability to access childcare. By adopting these program improvements, we can help our state's most vulnerable children make real gains to close the achievement gap and set themselves up for future success. In addition, parents would know that their children would be receiving high-quality childcare while they seek and keep employment to support their families. Passing this bill is a 2-generational solution that closes the achievement gap, helps parents find and keep employment, reduces the looming workforce shortage, and helps families and children break the cycle of homelessness. Thank you for allowing me to testify today, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are some.
Thank you, Mr. Gumnett. Actually, I have a couple of questions. I mean, I'm glad that you brought up a lot of the issues around mobility, and it seems that this bill has a lot of areas where they try to create some more flexibility to address those needs, and we all know a highly mobile student is much more difficult to educate than one that has stable housing and those supports. And then I'm glad that you brought up the domestic violence part of it too. I was just noticing in section 12 that there's a family assets is less than or equal to $1 million as a condition of eligibility, and I was just curious if anybody knows the reason why that number was picked. Welcome back, Ms. Hugdahl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the past, there hasn't been an asset limit. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, the other limits of the program have kind of contained the use of the program. In some ways, it's contained it too much. But my understanding is that having a stated limit is a requirement.
Oh.
And so in the past, there hasn't really functionally needed to be one. I think this is kind of looking at checking a box that doesn't create other complications for trying to get help to families. We've, at Legal Aid, I've never heard or seen of a family that's even come anywhere close to having $1 million in assets. The other limits on the program and the other income pieces, that's really where the confines of the program really come from. So, thank you.
Thank you, that makes a lot more sense to me, you know. Okay, any questions from members? All right, is there anyone else here that would like to testify for or against this bill? Representative Franson, do you have any closing, other comments that you'd like to add?
No, I look forward to continuing this dialogue in policy. One of the benefits of this bill also is that county to county. We heard a lot about that when we traveled the state, from parents being very frustrated living in one county. If they moved to the next, they'd be kicked off and at sometimes would have to quit their job because they did not have childcare. So that's another good benefit of the bill. But thanks for allowing this bill to be heard, everybody, and Monday night is going to be super fun.
Well, it doesn't sound like this is the last time we'll be discussing this issue, so thank you for those closing remarks. And so if there's any other further questions, Hearing none, Representative Franson renews her motion that House File 1458 be approved and recommended to the Committee on Health and Human Services Reform. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And I think that we can adjourn now, right? Our next meeting will be held Monday, February 27th at 6:30 PM here in room 200. And I want to thank everyone for being flexible. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.